Okay, so now we're going to read the final scene for Act 3, and that is Scene 6. This will be quite a difficult scene to read because it is said entirely in sarcasm. So if you'll turn to page 126 of your No Fear Shakespeare books, I'll read for you a summary that you can copy down. With sarcasm, Lennox and an unnamed lord discuss recent events in Scotland. They are convinced that Macbeth killed Duncan and Banquo, and are glad that the princes escaped. They reveal that Macduff too fled to England to join with Malcolm. This image will represent Lennox, and I chose to use this edited picture of Malcolm to represent the unnamed lord. I thought that it would be a little bit funny, but I also thought it would be a good representation that back when these plays were first performed, they would only use a few actors who would change in between scenes to represent different characters. This scene occurs inside the palace in Forres. My former speeches have but hit your thoughts, which can interpret farther. Only, I say, things have been strangely born. The gracious Duncan was pitied of Macbeth. Marry, he was dead. And the right valiant Banquo walked too late. Whom, you may say, if it please you, Fleance killed. For Fleance fled. Men must not walk too late. Who cannot want the thought how monstrous it was for Malcolm and Phil Donalbain to kill their gracious father? Damned fact! How did it grieve Macbeth? Did he not straight in piteous rage the two delinquents tear, that were the slaves of drink and thralls of sleep? Was not that nobly done? Ay, and wisely too, for 'twould have angered any heart alive to hear the men deny it. So that, I say, he was born all things well, and I do think that he had Duncan's sons under his key, as an't please heaven he shall not. They should find what 'twere to kill a father, so should Fleance. But peace, from the broad words, and 'cause he failed his presence at the tyrant's feast, I hear Macduff lives in disgrace. Sir, can you tell where he bestows himself? The son of Duncan, from whom his tyrant holds the due of birth, lives in the English court, and is received of the most pious Edward with such grace that the malevolence of fortune nothing takes from his high respect. Thither Macduff is gone to pray the holy king upon his aid to wake Northumberland and warlike Seaward, that by the help of these, with him above, to ratify the work, we may again give to our tables meat, sleep to our nights, free from our feasts and banquet bloody knives, do faithful homage, and receive free honours, all which we pine for now, and this report hath so exasperated the king, that he prepares for some attempt of war. Sent he to Macduff? He did, and with an absolute, Sir, not I, the cloudy messenger turns me his back, and hums, as who should say, you'll rule the time that clogs me with this answer. And that well might, advise him to a caution, to hold what distance his wisdom can provide. Some holy angel fly to the court of England, and unfold his message ere he come, that a swift blessing may soon return to this our suffering country, under a hand accursed. I'll send my prayers with him. Okay, and that is the end of Act 3, Scene 6. A nice small act, so we'll return to the beginning on page 126, and I'll go through some annotations you can make on vocabulary and themes. So we'll begin with Lennox's sarcastic speech, and we'll look at line 2 when he says, which can interpret farther. So that means you can draw your own conclusions, and that again is almost breaking through the fourth wall, where he is also allowing the audience to know that they can draw their own conclusions, hinting that he will be using sarcasm. And so they're basically talking about the story that Macbeth wants them to swallow about both Duncan and Banquo's murders, And they are making it very clear that it's becoming more and more unbelievable. So they're saying that, let's see, on line 4, when he says the gracious Duncan was pitied of Macbeth, he's saying that Macbeth only pitied Duncan after he was dead. And then they say on line 6, if it pleases you, Fleance killed Banquo, which of course we know because Fleance is a young boy and Banquo was a seasoned soldier. That's pretty ridiculous. And also we know that Fleance had no reason to kill Banquo. And we'll continue down to the night that Duncan died. So they're saying how monstrous it was that Malcolm and Donalbain killed their father. That's on line 9. It's meant to be read also as sarcasm. And they're saying, how much did it grieve Macbeth on line 11? And did he not straight in pious rage tear the two delinquents? So the two delinquents there refers to the guards that were still drunk and asleep. So that were the slaves of drink and thralls of sleep. So they're saying, oh, how brave it was that he killed the drunken sleeping guards, obviously intending for the meaning that it wasn't brave at all to come through. And then they say, oh, and it was wise, because wouldn't it have angered anyone to hear them deny it? So, of course, they're saying if the men had woken up, they would have denied it because they think that Macbeth killed Duncan, as he did. And then they say the line, as on it please heaven, he shall not. So, if it pleases heaven, he shall not. And this is referring to if Macbeth was able to get all the sons, so that's Malcolm, Donalbain, and Fleance under lock and key. And Lennox breaks through his sarcasm here and says, and if it pleases heaven, he shall never have them under lock and key. So he's hoping that Macbeth will lose this fight. And then on line 23, he refers to Macbeth as a tyrant. So he says, his presence at the tyrant's feast, referring to Macduff's presence at the tyrant's feast. And this is the first time Macbeth is referred to as a tyrant. That would be a good quote for you to write down. So at the tyrant's feast. So Macbeth there is being referred to as a tyrant. And that really shows how his reign is going. So people are turning against him in droves. Then we'll go down to the Lord speaking on line 25. He's saying, he echoes Lennox's words and he calls Macbeth a tyrant. He says, from whom this tyrant holds the due of birth, and due of birth there means birthright. So he's basically saying that Macduff has gone to the son of Duncan, that is Malcolm, from whom Macbeth the tyrant is holding back his birthright. And now we go into an interesting bit of description of the English court. And this really is good press or a good image for England, especially to their new Scottish king that this play would have been performed for. And they're saying that he's gone to the most pious Edward, referring to the king of the 11th century, King Edward. And he says, with such great grace that the malevolence of fortune, which is talking about misfortune, takes from his high respect. So basically also portraying that king as somebody who has pity for their misfortune. And then they call him on the next page, line 30, the Holy King, which again is another very positive image of England. To wake Northumberland and warlike seaward, that by the help of these with him above. So here's this image of England and Scotland working together, which I'm sure Shakespeare hoped would be taken very well by King James, who was combining England and Scotland at this time. And then we'll go down to line 36, where there's the phrase, do faithful homage, which basically means they will give loyalty to only the real king, and they believe that Malcolm is the real king here. Then there's a phrase further down when the Lord is talking about the messenger who was sent to get Macduff to come back, and he calls him the cloudy messenger, and cloudy here means frowning. And underneath that, he quotes the messenger who says, "You'll rue the time that clogs me with this answer." And clogs here means burdens. And that's telling, because that means that the messenger knows that Macbeth will punish him for bringing back the bad news that Macduff will not return. And that's the end of Act 3. So before I upload Act 4, I will put up a video introducing the 3 essay questions that you could look at for Act 3, as well as going through how you might break down and respond to one of those questions.